Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Hello. We're going to be drawing cards today. Welcome in, guys who are early. And Jessica B., welcome to being a Winged Canvas Angel. Thank you for your support. Hello, Anchi. Welcome. And Ramos, I've been getting into cards because of my boyfriend, and now I want to draw some. That's awesome. If you guys have a car in mind, let me know. I actually put out a poll, and these were some of the ones that people have requested. Yes, you'll learn how to draw cars. Welcome in. Hello, and Tartanus. And Kevin, our wonderful mod. Hello there, Castle. Welcome in. Back to the Future car. Yeah, you know what? I definitely think Back to the Future car would be awesome. Actually, give me 1 second here. I gotta fix my avatar. 1 second. 1 second. Let's see here. Hello? Hello? Nope. I just got a new microphone, so it's like... Ah, here we go. It's not picking up, but I just changed my source, so it should be good now. All right. Yeah, so if you guys have a car in mind, definitely let me know what you want to see me draw. There we go. Now my mouth is moving. So we've got some classic cars. Mustang is one of my favorites. I think when I was young, I just always wanted a Mustang. Not this particular model. This was the first ever one from 1965. So let me know, guys, if you are if you're in the chat, let me know if you want classic or modern, because the DeLorean has a 2025 model. So this one is actually 1981, I think. That's the year, that's the make of the Back to the Future model. The classic one, 1981, the modern one is 2025. I actually, I didn't even know they had a 2025 model, but it's pretty epic looking. And I really want to draw this one over here. Let's see. Yeah, Corvette. Corvette's a good one. It was definitely on my list. Hello, Broken Wing Zeal. Welcome in, one of our lovely students. Classic. Okay. Okay. Mustang. Mustang is your favorite. Well, Kevin, you're I think you're gonna swing the vote there. DeLorean Mustang Fusion. Hello, the great October. Hey, Chi, welcome. Welcome in. Nice to see you here. We're just trying to figure out which car you want to see me draw, classic or modern. But seems like we can't decide. But before we move on, if this is your first time here, our mission at Winged Canvas is to make art education easily accessible for everyone. Join us for free live stream lessons every week. So we're streaming Monday nights and Saturday afternoons Eastern time. And we are not just a YouTube channel, we are an online school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their passion into income. And so shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. I see Anchi in there, one of our lovely members, and as well as Broken Wing Zeal student. Thank you, thank you. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching your skills improve in our classes and weekly critiques. So if you are an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord, where you can find our notes from our streams, as well as artwork and art challenges. So speaking of challenges, this month's challenge is March of the Machines. So that's kind of why we're doing the car theme in March, right? Is cars, machines. This month is all about how to draw mechanical things, because even though we love drawing humans and animals and organic things on this channel, machines and mech are definitely worthy of adding to your repertoire as an artist. You get really, really good at drawing forms. So let's see who our picks are for this month's submissions. If you aren't on the Discord, join the monthly Discord. Join the monthly challenge on Discord for a chance to be featured on our stream. So every month we have a theme to help keep you guys accountable, to help give you guys something to draw. And the people who are selected, like MC Cactus here, did a really cute little robot. Little robot with like in a living room, and he's got like a little cactus inside there. I think it's really, really cute. Love the subtle glow too on the wheel. I think that looks awesome. And I wish I had a little bot like that could keep my plants alive, because I have trouble keeping plants alive. I got an automatic grower. My mom-in-law gave me an automatic herb grower, and it's the best. Like, I don't have to do anything but refill the water and put it on a timer. So thank goodness for machines. MC Cactus, I think this is awesome. I really, really like this piece, how simple it is. And yeah, thanks for submitting. Okay, our second submission is by Potato on the Discord. Potato. I feel like there's more than one Potato, but Potato on the Discord. I really love this character. You described it as a synth inspired by a maglev train. I don't know what a maglev train is, but I can see the reference there, and I think it looks really cool. Love seeing your process work. Love seeing your inspiration. And even here, like, you've got a little shadow. Little details there. I think it's great. Nicely done. Love the color palette as well. And like seeing your inspo. I think that's a really, really cool source of inspiration. So references are your friend. They definitely help you draw. So don't be afraid to use references. And last but not least, Chi. I think she's in the chat. Chi, love this piece. If you guys didn't know, Chi of Many Worlds has very popular, very popular in the VC. Always sharing his art process, and I think that this piece is really epic, even like with the atmospheric perspective and the mist and the texture on this piece, and even like the lighting. It's kind of got that, like, I don't know, like that sort of dismal Warhammer like backlit lighting, which I think is beautiful, and love seeing your work as always. So if you aren't on the Discord already, this is another reason to join. Not only is she always in there painting and sharing his process, he's also a verified critiquer. So if you want to get some great feedback on your artwork from our wonderful community, join our Discord. All right. So thank you guys again for submitting. I really love seeing your artwork and all of the variety that our members and our community creates. Alrighty, so let's see the vote here. Classic Cars is winning. Thank you, Kevin, for putting that poll in. 65% says classic. Okay. Classic it is. I feel like there's a lot of Mustang lovers here, so I actually had planned on drawing a classic and a modern car But interested in seeing what you guys want to see me do. Like, do you want to see like a fully rendered car? Because if you want to do fully rendered, then it's going to take me some time. Or if you just want to see like the process of drawing a vehicle, then I can just draw one. So again, let me know what you guys want. And in the meantime, I will do some sketching and just kind of talk to you guys about how to approach drawing cars. And by the way, I'm using a program called Rebelle, and Rebelle is a program that I'm just trying out. I don't actually use it a lot, so I'm going to be figuring things out as I go. I'm just going to put this here for now. Yeah, let's do one at a time. So let's start with the Mustang. Let's see here. So the Mustang is actually quite easy to draw. If you wanted to, whenever you're sketching out a car, the best approach in my experience is to actually just think of boxes, right? Is to really just think of forms. So when you're drawing anything, any vehicle, you can kind of think about how to simplify it. So for example, I'm just gonna start sketching. But if you think about cars as basically combinations of forms, right? So if you guys are practicing your forms, you can think of, for example, a form like this. We'll call it a bar of gold, okay? And then basically this is attached to another form underneath, and basically that form is the same type of form, right? It's basically a prism. So it's basically the construction of multiple forms. And then if you have, like, for example, if you look at this Mustang, right? It starts off as a box, but you can sort of alter that box a little bit, right? So you can kind of put a little bit of a perspective on it. So for example, curving some of the edges of the box, you can sort of exaggerate the perspective, right? And add some curves to it, depending on how it's distorted. So here, there is a vanishing point, right? This is in perspective, which is why it's a little bit distorted. But basically, you never want to draw a car like this, right? Like some people do. I mean, if I'm drawing for a toddler, like, sure, I can draw a car like that. But that doesn't really help describe the form. Like, what you don't want to do is you don't want to outline. What you want to do is you want to construct. So think about when you're building a car or constructing a car, think about Legos, think about blocks and putting them together. Because if you draw an outline, like, it's doable, but you can't really make up lighting. It can only get you so far, right? So you can think about using like very simple 3D forms. So start with simple 3D forms and then modify, right? Modify, distort, exaggerate, whatever you need to do. Yeah, exactly. If you need help, build a car in Minecraft. Exactly. Hey, Quinn, welcome in. Just got out of Iggy's crit. Yeah, I saw you guys were there's a lot of people in there today. Anyway, glad it was helpful. I know you're a Rebelle user, so if you wanted to try it out with me, I am gonna see about trying the airbrush tool today and see what I can get away with. But we're talking about constructing cars using basic forms, right? So then what you can do is you can start to build on top of this, right? And you can start by thinking about how you would draw these forms on top of each other. So you can see why constructing cars using forms is really, it's actually pretty easy once you get the hang of it, right? And then you can modify. So for example, I wanted to modify, make the car a little bit, right? A little bit more on a tilt. I can do that. It's almost like carving out these cars using blocks of clay. Now, when it comes to drawing wheels, wheels are really hard to draw, especially wheels in perspective. So the best way to draw a wheel is to also put it in a form. Okay, so if you think about a tire, right? A tire is really a cylinder. If you think about it, right? It's a cylinder, there's a rim in here. So the easiest way to think about wheels is to draw them in a box. And the reason why I say to draw them in a box is because you can follow the perspective. Now, it's really easy when it's like a one-point perspective, for example, like something like this, right? Where you can basically like draw your X, you would draw your wheel inside this box, right? And then whatever the thickness of the wheel is here, it looks, the tire looks a little bit thick. So I might make it less thick, but basically it could come out to here, right? But this is actually really useful when you're drawing something that's like really distorted. So now let's say your wheel is kind of going back into space like this, right? Like let's say it's really, no, I gotta draw something more distorted. Let's look at this Mustang, for example, right? It's kind of got a wheel over here. So if I bring this down, I can see that, you know, one of the wheels is over there and then the other one is way back here. So I drew this a little bit long, but let me just fix it. It's kind of like back here, right? So you can see that these two wheels are actually not the same, right? Because they're going back into perspective so much. So you can, like, one way to do it is you can just sort of estimate, right? Just make your best guess, say, okay, your rim is here, and then, you know, you can kind of sketch it out. But sometimes, like if you're drawing motorcycles or if you're drawing something that really you really need to work out the perspective, the best thing to do is to figure it out in blocks. So you would draw 2 blocks and figure it out. So you can try to freehand it first, and then if you find that it's difficult or something's wonky, then you may have to draw blocks. So when you break it down like this, it's actually pretty easy, right? And let's see, Quinn, you're adding a car to the to-do list. Anything more than 1-point perspective scares me. Do you guys have a video explaining 2- and 3-point perspective? Yes, we do. Absolutely. We have a full playlist. Thank you, Kevin, for linking that. A one-shot comic that has a car from the inside perspective and 2 angles outside. So this video is perfect timing. Oh, great. I'm glad. So we're right now we're just kind of talking about construction, right? Construction versus outlining, because cars and mechanical things are structural. So you really need to think about structure and form and prioritize those things, right? Okay, so everything else is pretty easy. Like once you sort of map out the overall shape, right, then like everything can be sketched out. You can see that the perspective of my Mustang is slightly different than the Mustang in the picture, right? But overall, it still looks believable. Like it's still, you know, the forms are still the same. They're just in a slightly different perspective. So this allows you to draw the car in multiple perspectives, right? So if I wanted to exaggerate it more, all I would need to do is show more of the roof, right? And then I can just kind of make it up if I want to. I can always just make it up as I go. This one would be like this, right? If I really want to exaggerate the perspective. But basically you can kind of draw this car in any angle as long as you know overall what the shapes are, right? So, or what the forms are, I should say. And then all you would need to do is just kind of divide stuff in half and then figure out where the middle is. Right, so let's say this is the middle, and then draw in your headlights. Just remember that your cylinders are going to be very distorted. So you have to figure out what your cylinders are doing in space. And make sure that everything is following your line. So this is how you can very easily draw cars, right? It's more about figuring out the construction of it, like you are building it out of clay or you're carving it out of wood, right? So it's really about thinking like a sculptor instead of building stuff up organically like an artist. You're thinking about it as a sculptor. I mean, sculptors are artists as well, but it's just one way to draw. So when I went to university, I went to Art Center, and at Art Center they had a transportation design program, and it was really cool to see people design cars because these students would be actually drawing these cars using shapes, which was using tape. Like they would actually use a roll of tape and draw the car on the wall. I wish I had some pictures because it was just so cool to see. But yeah, that was the first time I actually saw people draw cars that way. And then they would end up sculpting them and everything else. So, all right, I'm finding my next reference here. And let me know if you guys have any questions in the chat. But this is the next reference. The DeLorean, and if I have time, I will draw the modern one. This is the modern one that I wanted to draw. I thought it was super cool looking, and maybe to draw them next to each other. All right. So let's see here. Okay, so let's start with the classic DeLorean. Let's start with the classic one because it's got the most interesting shapes. Let me try to pull up the reference here. All right, so actually I'm using a program called Rebelle, and it's got this really cool feature where you can project the image onto your canvas. Look at that. It's pretty cool. I guess this would allow you to trace stuff and study stuff. So a lot of people would be like, you know, tracing's bad and don't trace. And although I agree, I do think tracing is good for learning structure. So if you know, don't trace to redraw something like that, you don't learn anything, right? But what you can do is like there's a good way to trace, and that's learning. That's learning forms. So for example, learning your perspective, right? Figuring out, you know, like roughly where your box is, right? Like roughly if you had to figure out like what angle it's in, right? Just sort of like working that out. This has a little bit of value because, you know, you can work out overall what your negative space looks like, right? So for example, you can see, okay, this is a triangle here. This is a rectangle where the line of vision is like right here, right? You're looking up at this car, like your line of vision is pretty low, right? That means the photographer was probably lower to the ground, definitely not standing up and looking up. So I think that being able to trace can help you look for simple shapes. So if shapes is something that you have trouble with, right, then you can basically divide your you can divide your drawing into specific shapes, right? So this is a good reason to trace. Trace to study. Don't trace to trace. Like, don't trace to redraw, right? See, what I'm doing here is I'm not, like, this looks nothing like a car. What I'm really trying to do is look for proportions and shapes. This actually looks like a cool building or some kind of couch. But this is how you want to be thinking about mapping out cars versus just outlining. Okay, so let's start drawing it purely from eyeballing. So let's see here. So I'm going to start by drawing the box. And I'm probably going to exaggerate it a little bit, just tilt it up a little bit. If you have trouble like drawing straight lines, try to draw with your arm instead of your wrist, right? So basically, I'm trying to figure out exactly how I would construct this car and then exaggerate the perspective just a little bit. It's not going to be exactly the same when you eyeball it and you construct it, because you're going to be changing some of the perspective a little bit more naturally. So you just want to find out, you know, where the corner is roughly, and then where the lights are. So you want to draw a lot of these lines, a lot of these straight guidelines for yourself. So I would say the door is probably about halfway, maybe a little less than halfway. And I always tend to make the ends of the car a little bit too small. So I'm gonna have to end up extending it. but look for all of the lines and all of the alignments that you see. There we go. Actually, a car stream was a request by members in our Discord community. I know we haven't really done a lot of car streams, but cars are a really popular subject, and I actually don't draw a lot of cars, so this is good practice for me. This is just kind of like a good way to get back into the basics. So you can see that this line that I drew here sort of aligns the two wheels, right? And it kind of gives me a good point of reference for where those should be. Hey, Potato, welcome in. Artist in the chat. Maglev train is a train that uses rails and electromagnets. Cool. Oh, yeah. Okay, so those are the high-speed trains. Very cool. I've actually been on one before. Those things are crazy fast. And super smooth. Like you're actually like levitating, right? You're like floating. So it's there's almost no sound either. It's like an electric car. So pretty cool. Very cool technology. Where's that train from that you're referencing? Like what country is it from? This is a how to draw cars stream, and it happens to have some perspective in it. I mean, I'm not actually using any perspective grids. It's really just kind of eyeballing how to draw forms, right? So I went into a little bit of detail here, but basically I'm eyeballing this. I'm not really following any grids or anything like that. I'm just looking for simple alignment. So for example, the corner here, the corner right here, if I brought that corner all the way up, it would kind of touch the door, the top of the door, right? Let's say the top of the door is about there. I'm visualizing like the distance between here and here is similar to that here and here, right? I'm not like measuring it really that carefully. Like I could probably measure it with my fingers and it's probably a little bit shorter, but that's all you really need to eyeball stuff. Like you don't need to draw extensive perspective lines, right? You can really get away with eyeballing a lot as long as it makes sense. So, you know, like these two doors, like this part should align. And even though the doors kind of open in different perspectives, you can just draw them together and just make sure that everything's aligned properly. And then make any adjustments later. What is a car if not a fancy box? Exactly. It's a super fancy box. I have been collecting Hot Wheels for my son. And I would love to get my hands on one of these DeLoreans. But they're hard to find. There's like lots of, like our local dollar store sells Hot Wheels for $2, I think, $2 or $3. It's crazy how cheap they are, but they're all like the cars that nobody wants. So yeah, I would love to get my hands on one of these. Okay, so you can see with the door, I just kind of eyeballed it, you know, just looking for negative shapes. Like I can see a diamond shape in here. right? Visualizing the shapes that I see. I see a square in there. So just like eyeballing can be super effective and a really good way to practice and just practice your accuracy. Hey, happy, welcome in one of our lovely students. We're drawing cars today. I guess I'm now committed to this DeLorean. So I drew, I actually drew a Lamborghini in one of my classes, and it had these special fancy doors. And then I asked the subscribers what you guys want to see me draw. And DeLorean had 2 mentions, so that's what we're doing. Good pick though. Giving me an extra challenge with these doors. So a tip I have for you guys is when you're drawing cars, even if the cars are like not as boxy, say they're a bit more contoured, right? They're round, or they've got more like nice curves to them. You could always start it off with boxy, like boxy shapes, and then round it later. I actually think that that's better because it forces you to simplify, and it forces you to kind of get the basic shapes right without going into too much detail. All right, so if you're drawing along with me, I would love to see it. I would love to see it later on in our Discord. If you do draw along with me, let me know. You can tag me. Only if you draw along with me, though. And I'd love to see your work. Okay, so this is this part of the wheel, right, can be a little bit challenging because we assume that the rim is going to fit neatly inside here, inside the fender here, and it actually doesn't, right? Like if you squint at it, you'll see the top actually goes a little bit lower. So like I said, eyeball the wheel first, and if you have trouble eyeballing it, then try to put it into a prism. So there's like different parts to the wheel, to the tire. There's like this front part, and then there's the part that touches the pavement, which is actually a little bit rounded up at the top. And over here you can hardly see it. I can't actually see it in the reference, so I'm just gonna guess that it's like there. And now that I'm looking at it, it looks way too big. The middle should actually be like here, but I made it way too big. Let's try that again. Note to self, figure out where the middle is. And then draw the rest of the wheel. That would make more sense. The other thing you could do is you could draw the shadow. I should have done that first. Like if you draw the shadow, you know that the wheels touch the shadow, and you can kind of like get the perspective of the shadow. So the perspective of the shadow kind of goes like this. So I need to know, so I need to make sure that the wheels actually touch that shadow. Hello, Toaster. Another one of our lovely students. How do you draw round cars? You draw them as square, then you round them. There's many ways to draw round cars. I had a Volkswagen Beetle in the lineup, but people who showed up here early chose classic cars, and DeLorean got a lot of votes, so I'm doing this one. Basically, it's the same process, right? You just want to simplify it for yourself. So if it's round, you know, ask yourself, what is the closest shape, right? Like if I'm thinking the Volkswagen Beetle, to construct the Beetle would be like, you know, to me, it feels like a cylinder and then like another cylinder. I'm just making this up. I don't actually have a reference, but it feels like a cylinder on top of like a rounded prism, right? So it's still a structure. It's still like a combination of forms. It's just round. Okay, so the shadow would kind of do this. And I can't see the other car, the other wheel on this car, but what you can do is you can find the bottom of that wheel, like if you had to guess where it is, right? And then it would touch that line. So once you have the basic shapes down, then you can modify. So for example, I need to make the front of the car a little bit longer, right? So then I can kind of add on here. And modify. So work big to small. Try not to get lost in the details, because if you're just focusing on details, it can be very confusing. Like I can't tell you how many times I've gotten lost just like trying to draw a car because I'm getting lost in the details. So then I'm like, wait a minute, which line is this? I'm confused. So the best way to avoid that is just to keep it really simple. Don't complicate it until you have to. I'm going to modify the wheel shape. Right, so you can see it's based off of something that's very square, but then I can modify it later, right, so that it's a little bit more accurate. So I'm using a program called Rebelle. The folks at Rebelle were kind enough to give me a copy to try. And as a traditional artist, I actually quite enjoy it. I enjoy the simplicity of it, and I like how it feels like pencil. It's got a pretty natural eraser as well. Yeah, Potato, thanks for submitting. Actually, you know, you don't get featured until you submit. You gotta try. So thanks for trying. Thanks for doing the monthly challenges. Okay. So I realize now that I confuse this line here with this one, and it's the wrong one. Let's see, I'm gonna move this up. Okay, so now I'm gonna do some more details. I'm just gonna like map out where the details are, and then I will get to rendering. I'm assuming you guys want to see me render, right? You want to see me like finish this car digitally? Yes, or do you want to see me draw the modern version in the same way? Because the first 80% takes as long as the last 20%. So it's gonna be a while. It's a good stream to practice my straight lines. Let me know if you're drawing along with me. Let me know in the chat. Or if you're doing your own thing, what car you're drawing. Yeah, I'm happy to just like sketch cars, guys. Like I'm happy to do like sketch cars by request, so I don't have to render this thing. But if you guys want to see me render, let me know. Rendering is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun, but it takes a lot of time. I could probably do a small render maybe, but yeah, if you guys just want me to draw a bunch of cars, I'm happy to do that as well. See, I got a little bit confused here. I got the wrong alignment, so I'm gonna fix that. I kind of drew the bumper in a weird way. So let's fix that. The more the merrier. Okay, okay. That's good. All right, well then I will take your requests. If there's a car you want to see me draw, let me know in the chat. I'll write it down. Let's see how many we can get through. I'm just gonna finish this one, just like the rough sketch of it. And then we can move on to the others. So what is it about drawing cars that you find challenging? Is it mostly just the structure of the car? You know, like drawing essentially like the outline and making it look like it's actually structurally sound and not wonky. I think that's what most people struggle with, is just to be able to draw a car that actually looks solid. Like the rendering is actually pretty easy when it comes to cars, because like it's really, you can use the airbrush and the lasso tool and just go nuts, and it can look really good as long as it looks structurally sound. So I think structure is probably most people's challenge when it comes to drawing vehicles. Aw, see you later, Quinn. Okay. This is hard. I know it's hard. Don't worry. Don't worry. You got this. John MW. Yeah, it's a DeLorean. These things are so cool. Rendering the hood and above tire. Okay, maybe I can do a little bit. How do you sell the roundness of the rim? Oh, that's a good question. So let's take this rim here, for instance. The one thing you want to remember about rims is that they are not, like, they're not a perfect donut, right? Like if you're looking at a wheel from the front, right? It's gonna look like a perfect donut somewhat. But most wheels are actually really distorted, you know? So a lot of them look like this, right? They look like this. And so then, you know, what you need to do is figure out, okay, where is the middle of that wheel? Okay, this is the middle. And then where's the middle of this part? It's right here. And then you kind of have to draw out the wheel as if it's a 3D form within this shape in space, right? So you kind of have to think about it like that. And that's what makes it really hard, because also tires are not flat, right? So if you think about a tire from the side, let's say you think about a tire like this, okay? It's going into space, it's like this. So the tire itself is actually round, right? Like the top of the tire and the bottom of the tire are rounded. So it makes it even harder, right? To draw that tire. So for me, I think personally, it's easier to just eyeball it for the most part, because drawing a wheel in a box in perspective is just as hard. Right? It's like it's kind of like you choose between hard or harder. And so I would most likely tell my students, like, just eyeball it until you can't. Eyeball it until like something doesn't look right, and then figure it out using your box. That's probably the best way to do it. So you can see, for example, with this rim, right, it's actually indented, and it doesn't appear indented in the front one. It just appears indented in the back wheel. And so the nuances in the differences of the wheel from the front and the back is also really subtle. Like it's not what you think it is. So you really have to observe and look at your references, right? Don't just try to like draw it from imagination. Like that is probably not going to work out for you unless you draw hundreds of cars, and you know it's or you're drawing like, you know, a cartoon car or something, like that's fine. But really looking at your reference is going to help you. Okay, so I'm gonna try to draw one of these seats in here. A Toyota Corolla. Okay. No problem. Somebody said a Civic too. I have a Civic, so it's a kind of boring car, but you know, common enough. Trucks. Cybertruck, no. I'm a little salty still about a fake Tesla account hacking into our channel. So I'm a little salty about Tesla in general, so I'm just not gonna draw a Cybertruck. It's easy enough to do. It's like pretty boxy, so same method as this. I don't know, some people like it. I think it's I definitely think it's arresting, but I'm in the it's ugly camp. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it definitely stands out. Like, actually at my grad show, I think it was like the lead designer of Toyota, I forget his name, he was speaking at my grad show, and he basically said that if you want an outstanding design, a really memorable design, then nobody's gonna like it 100%. There's always people that are gonna hate it. And he used the PT Cruiser as an example. Do you guys remember the PT Cruiser? I don't know if you guys remember the PT Cruiser, but it's a very unique looking vehicle. And it was everywhere. Like, it was really popular for a while. And like some of it, like I always thought it was unique looking. It's not a car that I would buy for any reason, but I was in the it's ugly camp. I did not like the PT Cruiser. I thought it was kind of ugly, but you know, that's just me. But the people who loved the PT, like, they loved it, you know. So you either have like hardcore fans and haters, or like people who are like, nah, or oh, it's hideous, I would never drive that. Right? It's always going to be like controversial, right? So whenever you have like an award-winning design or something really, really different, you have to just accept that not everybody's going to like it. In fact, most people are not going to like it. But that's the risk, right? That comes with the reward. So, you know, if you've ever designed something that you thought was really cool looking and other people hate it, don't take it personally. That happens all the time in the design industry, and sometimes it's a good thing. I love the boring cars. Ooh, the Hummer. Okay, okay. Dodge Challenger. Civic. Ooh, there's so many. A Corvette. Okay. Gullwing Mercedes-Benz XL. Another Gullwing. I don't know if I have it in me for another Gullwing. You love the boring cars? Okay, I can do a boring car. Everybody's grandma had one. Yeah. I do want to draw a Corvette. I love Corvettes. They're beautiful. Okay, I'll do a Corvette next. As long as like you guys can see this car and be like, oh, I know what that is, then it's good, right? Then I'm like, okay, I have communicated with my lines what it's actually going to be. So all right, I'm just going to give it some quick shading. So I actually like this kind of loose look. That's not like super fully rendered. But if you're only doing line art, then it would help to, for example, make a few accent lines, right? Some accent lines that are a little bit darker. For example, this one that kind of connects to the inside of the car. Anything that's like more mechanical or important to the structure, you can emphasize a little bit more. Like this part is a little bit darker. And then as you build up the line, you'll get more and more confident with where they go, right? Because if you figure it out before you render or before you know, you really have to go in and do the details, then everything else is easy. So I typically work big to small, and even like with these rims, I might just accent the opposite parts of the cylinder, and then do I really want to draw these these in? You'll notice that some of them appear larger and some of them appear smaller. So instead of drawing all of them, I just kind of draw some of them and then suggest the rest. That's kind of my go-to, to just not, you know, not worry too much about getting it super detailed. And just letting, like, I always like the aesthetic of letting the viewer sort of piece things together. You know, like if you told me everything, if you showed me all the details, there would be nothing left to my imagination. So there's something really rewarding about leaving some stuff that's either unfinished or just like suggested, so that the viewer has something to figure out, to solve, right? That's a really, it's like a really rewarding thing. And also a design tactic. Like it's always much more satisfying when there's a little bit of mystery or intrigue, right? Some stuff that's like not there, like even not being able to see the wheels, it leaves a little bit of room for that, for your eye to fill in the blank. It's actually Gestalt theory. We have a video on it. If you feel like nerding out to the to Gestalt theory after this, you'll know exactly what I mean when you watch it. It's like sometimes the best thing to do is to leave things undrawn, leave areas up to the viewer to sort of figure out. Okay, I'll see if I could do a Civic. Some of you guys are saying Civic. All right. Well. Oh, look at these leather seats. They have wrinkles on them. And these are those little details that you can add. So for example, with Gestalt theory, right? One example I can think of is, like, let's say that you're drawing a different textures, right? The car is going to look more boxy and more sort of structural if you put a little bit of looseness into the fabric. So like here I'm drawing the car, right, the seat of the car, and you can see that just putting a little bit of like wrinkles in the seat, you know, even like letting some of those lines be a little bit less mechanical enhances the mechanical part of the car. Like it actually makes the car feel more like a machine, or more I guess mechanical, when there's something soft like the seat, right? So ooh, there's lights on the door. That's cool. I didn't even notice that. So there are some corners that you can emphasize too. So for example, like these lights, right? If you wanted to put some texture in them, I would only put them in the, like on the right hand side, because the left hand side, you know, you can just kind of suggest it. So I would always put details in the parts that are the closest to me, right? So like right here. Over here, and then make this look like it's glowing somewhat. Drawing while talking, is that a rule of contrast thing, the organic versus mechanical? Yes, it is. It's like contrast is a principle of design. And so the more contrast you have in your drawings or like in anything that you create, whether they're drawings or they're designs, usually is better for aesthetics. But like you don't want contrast everywhere, you just want contrast selectively. Like you want it in the areas that you want the viewer to look at first, right? So for example, why do we look at eyes first? Because eyes have a lot of contrast, and because of the whites of the eyes and the blacks of our eyes, right? So that's kind of why we look at eyes first, right? But let's say you're drawing a portrait and you choose to put all of the contrast on the nose. Let's say there's like a shiny nose ring and you're like, okay, I'm gonna just like go and make it extra shiny. Well, then that's fine, but you're putting the contrast in the wrong place. So the contrast should be reserved for like the parts that you want the viewer to look at first. And so with the seat, for example, I just kind of like the detail of the seat. And I didn't shade it in this way, but in the car, you can see that like everything inside the vehicle is dark, right? So by really emphasizing the seat, the texture of the seat, I can make it stand out more, even if I shade everything in here to be dark. These are just, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. Whenever I'm drawing something, I will think about, you know, things like contrast, texture, and you can have contrast in different areas. You could have like contrast in value, contrast in texture, contrast in color. I have no idea what the windshield wipers are, so I'm just going to suggest it or just make it up. They're not that important, right? So I'm just gonna like put some marks there and tell whoever's looking at this, oh, these are windshield wipers, but how they work, I don't know. And it doesn't matter. All right. This is actually called dynamic drawing, or dynamic sketching. A lot of fun. And you can do it with all things mechanical. So cars, trains, motorcycles, bikes. If you haven't done it before, it's really fun to just try once. It's very hard in the beginning. So just like focus on your structure. And then everything else will come. Okay, so I'm not going to get too much into shading because I do want to draw some other types of cars to show you guys different ways of rendering, or different ways of sketching, sorry, dynamic sketching. Let me just check the poll. Okay, so 70% of you guys said keep sketching, the more the merrier. So let's name this layer. This is the DeLorean 1981. Okay. Okay. Let's see what other references I've got up here. Corvette, Dodge Challenger, Hummer, Civic. Okay, I'm gonna draw Civic because I have a Civic and it's like a boring car, and most people draw like sports cars and stuff. So I'm gonna draw a Civic. Good old Honda Civic. the most utilitarian car, like the cheapest, most affordable car. Let's do it. Let's see. Somebody said a year. Just scrolling up. 2002 Honda Civic. Okay, 2002 Honda Civic. Oh, this classic version. I'm gonna draw the hatchback. I really like the Honda Civic hatchbacks. Actually, they're I used to have a Subaru manual car, and I loved it. It was a Subaru Impreza. Here, I'm trying to find a good picture of a Civic. Okay, let's do this one. Take a screenshot and save it. In 2002. All right. Let's load this baby. It's going to replace this one. All right, Honda Civic. The Honda Civic is like the opposite of the PT Cruiser, right? Just like everybody likes a Civic. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe like is a strong word, but everybody can tolerate a Civic. There's nobody that hates a Honda Civic. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's like, oh, I hate a Honda Civic. Said nobody ever. Yeah. They're great cars. They're really, really great cars. All right, let's do this. So your family had a red Honda Civic. That one was nice. Yeah, Civics are just like good old reliable cars. Use a bigger brush here. All right, so with the Civic, especially with a hatchback, right? You can think of it as like this is kind of a curvy car. It's not as much of a boxy car. So there's one way to think about it. So if you're drawing a hatchback, right, you can kind of think about like if the profile of the car sort of looks like this, right? If you're thinking about it as an isometric form, then you can kind of bring these lines over like this. And then you can sort of bring it down, right? You can kind of do it this way. So this is kind of like a rudimentary way of sketching out a vehicle from its profile shape. So this can be you know, an easy way to draw it out, right? So and then especially like with the wheels, you can just sort of eyeball it. For example, you know, where you think the wheels go. But I don't really like to draw it that way. It works for some people. For me, when I look at a car like this, I still like to draw it as a box, mostly because it helps me understand, like it helps me think about it just purely from a structure point of view. So I usually draw the bottom and the top separately. Right, so here I'm kind of curving the bottom. You know, some people can think of this as its own shape. But usually if you want to draw something in better perspective, doing it this way where you're kind of starting with profile. If you do it this way, it tends to be very isometric, right? It tends to kind of look like a toy car. Like I've seen like wooden cars that kind of look like this. So it's fine. Like if this is the best way to wrap your head around cars, then that's totally fine. Whatever works for you. Yeah, we are drawing a Civic, a good old reliable Honda Civic. Before the stream, I was like looking at all the fancy cars I could draw, like all the Porsches and Lamborghinis, and I'm actually really refreshed to see how many requests for the Civic. Just like, you know, the most boring utilitarian car. I love it. It's so good. But like this model is actually quite nice. I really like the hatchbacks. So I don't know if you guys experienced this, but when I was a little kid, I just remember always seeing faces in cars. And like one of my earliest memories, I thought that cars like followed each other. Like there was like a leader and then the rest of the cars all followed the leader. And there were like good cars and bad cars, and I always thought like BMWs looked kind of angry. They were always like the kind of angry looking cars because they kind of have an upturned nose and like they've got like a snarl. But then I learned that cars are actually designed to look like faces. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not actually crazy. They're actually designed that way. Did you always see the faces too? Good. Happy says, I don't draw cars, but I kind of think about those Ranger derbies that I think Boy Scouts do, where they carve out a wooden car to race. Yeah, from that wood block. Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a term or like a word for people who see faces and everything. And if you have that, then you would make a great artist because you just see characters and everything. I would see faces in everything. It drove me crazy. Like when I was a little kid, I remember I would take a shower and there would be like a hairball, like a ball of hair or something, and I would see something. I would see a character. I'd see people dancing. I saw faces in everything. And a lot of the times cars. And when the movie Cars came out, I was like, somebody gets me. I thought that it was so well done. Just the way that they personified the cars was like exactly how I envisioned it as a child. So here, like drawing it this way, I can see that I totally misplaced the wheel. So let me redraw that. Looking for alignments, this bar actually goes right into the wheel. here. And then this part kind of turns around. I tend to use like darker lines when I'm like, okay, I'm sure that this is where this line goes. So I'm gonna go a little bit darker. I really like the sensitivity of this pencil. This pencil tool here in Rebelle. Drawing while talking. You glanced away and suddenly there's a car. It's not, it's like barely started. But thank you, I'm flattered. I realize like this looks nothing, proportion-wise, this looks nothing like the Honda Civic actually, because I made the face of the car way too small because I got too focused in on the details. So now I have to adjust everything else. I was too busy talking about seeing faces in cars that I didn't really look at what I was doing. But luckily I can transform this, right? Because it's digital and it's technically not cheating and I don't have to redraw it again. Yeah, like I'm just kind of comparing how many headlights I could actually put in the windshield and how many rear view mirrors I could actually put in between the mirror and the wheel, and I can like see all of my mistakes. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, I made the windshield too big. And also the hatchback is too long. So let's just redraw this back part. It's kind of looking like a van. Because I drew it a little bit too long. So let's see if I can transform this part. That's a little bit better. Like the side of the car is like roughly as wide as the windshield. We just know in our head that it's supposed to be wider, so then like we draw it wider even though it's not, right? Okay, that's a little better. It went from like a really big car to like a dinky car. And this Civic is pretty low to the ground. It's like one of the cool looking Civics. Let's see, a good way to gauge distance and perspective. Yeah, it's tough. Like when you eyeball stuff, suddenly like sometimes you're like really into a drawing, right? It's like, oh, it's going really well, but then you realize when you step back from it that it is totally disproportionate. That's what happens when you focus too much on the details. And I don't know about you, but I, even though like I studied perspective intensively and I can do it, I dislike having to measure stuff. I'm a lot a lot better and happier when I eyeball stuff. But to get really good at eyeballing, you have to be really, really good at two things. One, working big to small. And two, looking at your reference more often than you think you should. At least just kind of like glancing back and forth. Because a lot of people, I see a lot of people use reference, but they don't even look at it. They just like have it up. And then they draw, and then I'm like, oh, but you gotta look at it. You have to be able to, you know, glance at it back and forth, especially if it's something that you don't really draw often. Like I don't draw cars very often at all. And so I can draw a car like this out of my head. I could draw the car at the top, no problem. I can draw a whole bunch of cars out of my head that look like wooden toy cars. But if I actually wanted to draw a car that looked like a Honda Civic, even though I own one, I would probably still have to look at a reference, right? So looking at a reference is like, there's no shame in it. It helps you so much. And the wheels are especially hard. I think that's probably the hardest thing about drawing cars, is just the wheels. And making sure that they look somewhat believable. So for the back wheels, some things you could do to make sure that your wheels are properly aligned is you can just kind of like draw a line that aligns them at the top and a line that aligns them at the bottom. So like the shadow, for example, and then just bring it out. And then to figure out how wide it is, you can kind of compare it with the back window, right? So I would say it's probably like a lot thinner, less wide than the front wheel. And you really can't see too much detail. Which is good, right? Like if you can't see that much detail in the reference, then you really don't need to put a lot of detail in your drawing, right? Like the details should be in the front of the car. Like it should be the parts that are closer to you, not necessarily the back wheel, right? So I can suggest some of these. Like I always like looking at reflections in vehicles, like, you know, reflections of stuff in the vehicles. Again, it's another kind of organic versus industrial contrast, which I like the aesthetic of. And when you're shading cars, the best way to shade them is to hatch them. So not necessarily cross hatching, but hatching one way. I find when you cross hatch vehicles, it just kind of loses the motion, like I guess what am I trying to say? The aesthetic of a car kind of moving, right? Moving in space, the aerodynamicness of it, I guess. But like you notice like I shaded this part of the window going vertically and this part going horizontally because this window is closed and this window is open. So if I want one window to be open, and then I have to kind of draw it in a slightly different way, right? So that it, I'm gonna draw this window kind of half open there. Like if you're drawing humans or if you're drawing things that are a little bit more organic, I think cross-hatching is fine. But I think for cars in particular, the aesthetic is just better when it's just hatched in one direction. So I was going to use the airbrush tool here and just like render, but I'm having a lot of fun sketching it and hatching it out. Like this looks more like a car design sketch than, you know, a super rendered one, which I actually like. Hello, Jose Vaga Castro. Welcome in. You were gonna ask why I was shading them differently. Yeah, I was shading them differently because one window is supposed to be reflective and the other one not. But I mean, I guess it could have worked either way. And then, you know, it has a very, like this vehicle has a very recognizable bumper. Like that bumper is pretty iconic for the Honda, and I think I need to do it better justice here. So let me just redraw this part. When you're drawing, like, when you're trying to capture likeness, whether it's in a car or whether it's in a person, you always want to find like the most familiar feature of that car, right? Or of that person. So in this case, it's the car, and I find that this bumper here, especially like this part of the bumper that I'm drawing right now, is really like I would remember it as a key feature or something that I would recognize, right? So in that case, I think it's worth giving it the added detail. Does it have a spoiler in the back? I can't remember if it has like one of these. I can't remember, but I'm gonna add one because I like the way they look, even if it's not actually on there. All right, there you go, guys. There's your Honda Civic for y'all Civic fans. I realize I should have probably given this car some shadow. right? Some shading at the bottom. Yeah. This pencil in Rebelle is so nice. It's so nice. It feels like pencil. It actually is very, very nice. I love the pressure sensitivity of it. Holy smokes, it's great. Like, it actually feels like pencil. All right. Yeah, it's great. Oh, it's great. Okay, so we did a Mustang. Hey, Kenny, welcome in. We did a Mustang here. I'll show you. It was like the first, no, it was the first one we did. Yeah, it was the first one we did. It was just a very, very simple construction of a Mustang, but yeah, we did draw one. So I guess I should name this layer, huh? Mustang. This is a tracing demo. We did a DeLorean. We did a Mustang. We did a Honda Civic. I'm up for a truck. Who suggested a truck? I'm just gonna scroll up here. Any other vehicle requests? We probably have time for one more. I just saw your comment, Happy. Oh my god, Faye should draw her Carsona. I actually don't have a Carsona, but that's a cool that is a cool idea. Let's do a truck. Let's see. A Ford pickup. I have a Dodge Ram. Not a huge fan of it, but let's look for some cool looking trucks. Somebody suggested a Hummer. Let's do like a monster truck. Yeah, that's fun. My son is obsessed with monster trucks right now, and I think he would really like this. Let's see if I can find a cool one to draw. Let's see. Any of you guys been to a monster truck rally? So loud. Oh my goodness, I thought I would be going deaf. I didn't even go inside. I drove by one and it was deafening. Let's do monster truck just because it's so fun. I'll show you guys the one that I selected. Actually, I kind of want to draw a monster truck that's like jumping. Like a monster truck in the air. Yeah, okay. I want to draw one in the air with like the wheels going crazy. Okay, let's do this one instead. Yeah. Okay. Save this. And we'll load it in. And this is going to be our last one. I think Quinn requested monster truck, so here you go, Quinn. Let me put this in my reference. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at this guy. So good. So good. All right. Monster truck. All right, let's do a jump in monster truck. Sometimes, you know what? Sometimes, like I'm not a monster truck person. I think they're fun, but sometimes it's just cool to draw something you would never draw before, right? So like how would I approach this monster truck? So first of all, it's jumping in the air. The perspective is crazy. So you know, how would you approach it? So for me in this case, I would actually draw the axis of the wheels, because that would that's pretty much like the gesture, so to speak, right, of the wheels. So what you can do is you can kind of draw a diamond shape that represents the axis, right, the where the wheels attach. And then I would probably say, okay, let's imagine, like, let's try to place the wheels first, just like see how it would all work together, right? Like, just figure out the placement first. Ben Williams said, do you think general skill and fundamental improvement will improve all objects? Yes. Is there a trick to draw all objects with fundamentals? Yes. Yes and yes. Fundamentals is kind of like, it's like you don't need them on, like, how do I say this? Like, when you have them, it's like once you have the fundamentals, it then just becomes part of you. Like, you don't really lose it, right? You don't it's not like something that you have to do over and over again. You have it under your belt, and then it just becomes second nature, right? So kind of like when you first learn to drive, right? Or when you first learn to skate, or you know, you first learn a new sport, you're kind of thinking about everything. I'm gonna take hockey for example, because I just started learning. But like, when I first started learning hockey, I was like so nervous and scared because I was thinking about 20 things at the same time. Like, where I have to be in the game, like positioning. I have to keep my feet moving. I have to do stuff with my stick. I have to keep my head up. I got to look around and see who else is on the ice, who I can pass to, so I don't just like get a puck and then panic, right? Which I still do. So like, you're thinking about so many things that it gets very overwhelming. But the fundamentals of hockey is like stick handling, shooting, skating. So if I know how to skate, then I don't have to think about skating anymore, right? I don't think about it. I'm just thinking about other things because my feet already know how to skate, and like, it's just like motor movement. You don't think about it once you learn it. So the fundamentals are kind of the same. It's like, when you don't know them, it seems really hard to draw because you have to think about so many things at the same time, right? You got to think about perspective. You got to think about, you know, forms. You got to think about lighting and color. And oh my goodness, there's so much going on. Like, it's like overwhelming. But then once you have some of the fundamentals figured out, then it's not as scary anymore, right? Then you're like, okay, I'm not really thinking about all of these things. I'm just drawing and sort of trusting what I know. It becomes like an instinct, right? You don't really have to think about it. So that's kind of why the fundamentals are important. It's like if you were drawing a car for the first time and you've never drawn a car before, most likely you would outline stuff. You'd be like, okay, I'm gonna just like outline it. I'm gonna start from one corner, and I'm just gonna start outlining it and hope for the best. And usually it doesn't turn out so well, right? So when you know the fundamentals, you're just kind of like, okay, I know where to start, because I've learned that it's easier, like when you draw cars, it's a lot easier to draw basic forms and construct them than it is to outline. That's like the first thing we learned in this stream, is constructing out of forms is way better than outlining. Almost always better for anything, not just cars, for drawing people. So the more fundamentals you know, the less you really have to think about what it is, like the method and like all of those things. It just you start to get more clarity, and then you can focus on things like storytelling. You can focus on things like, design. And you're not worrying about the fundamentals. That was a very long-winded answer, so hope that was helpful. I feel like monster trucks barely have axles, they're more like legs. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so some of the fundamentals, like I teach a drawing foundations class. That's really the fundamentals, where we learn how to draw various things, like most of the time, humans, animals, cars, buildings, right? Draw everything and anything. Draw them together. Like I see a lot of people, just like they love drawing characters, so they just draw a bunch of characters on a white background, and like that's cool. It's really fun to draw characters, right? But then you don't really learn like how to draw them in context, and then maybe all of your characters start to look the same. And then you realize, oh, I never actually learned how to draw any of the other stuff. So draw the boring stuff. Like in my old sketchbooks, like even when I was a teenager, my favorite thing to draw was probably eyes, like celebrity eyes specifically. It was my favorite thing to draw. And I drew tons and tons of them. And then I realized I would only draw one eye instead of both eyes. And then I realized I couldn't draw both eyes together, and I got really, really frustrated. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to just draw everything and anything. I'm going to draw the most boring things that I would never draw, just to widen my vocabulary, just to like figure out how to draw the things that nobody ever wants to draw. So I drew things like, I drew my CD player, like my Discman. Tells you how old I am. I drew like brushes, I drew tape dispensers, I drew scissors, anything and everything I could see that was like not fun. And then I got really good at doing that kind of stuff, at the fundamentals. So that's kind of what you can do if you're looking to practice something, or you don't really care what you're drawing as long as you're practicing. Then just draw anything and everything you can see. The most boring, the better. Okay, so when I'm drawing something like this, like a monster truck, I think about what is the biggest, like what is the biggest thing, because you want to work big to small, right? So the biggest thing are the wheels, and the wheels, I have to kind of make sense of it. So, you know, you can either draw the wheels, like you can align them like this and kind of draw them as one cylinder, right? Or you can draw them separately, which I kind of started. And now I'm like looking at the distance between the wheels and realizing that they need to be a lot thicker than they actually are. So I'm gonna make that adjustment. But Ben Williams, I don't know if, are you on our Discord? You have some really good questions, but if you join our community, I'd love to continue the conversation on there. That's where I'm going to be posting all of my work as well. Do you think still lives or random sketches is more important? It depends on what it is you're doing. Like if you're working on the fundamentals, then yes. I just think studying everything, like drawing everything that you possibly can. And the reason why I say boring things is because I see people drawing the same subject matter over and over again. And it's usually anime. Nothing wrong with anime. I love anime, but like everybody draws anime. It's really fun to draw anime, right? Anime girls, like the most popular subject. Everybody wants to draw anime girls. I drew a lot of anime girls. Nobody really draws like staplers, right? Like, so, you know, I think there's something valuable in everything that you draw. Like every time you draw something, you gotta figure out how to approach it. So if you look at it as a challenge, like drawing a stapler, which it is, staplers are hard to draw. Or cars. People do like drawing cars, though. I feel like there's a lot of people who like drawing cars. I have to adjust this wheel. Like these wheels are taking me forever. Just like trying to figure out the thickness, the inside, outside, inner rim, outer rim. I've never drawn a monster truck before. This is the first time I'm drawing one, so I'm figuring it out live. You get to see all my mistakes, and kind of how I deal with it. So. Oof. Okay, I might start with the tread. Ramos, welcome back. Kevin asked if you can draw a character. Oh, if you can draw a character, you have a lot of competition. If you can draw anything, including objects and characters, you've got a better shot. You know what? Like, I did a class once where we designed a spaceship, and the design had to be inspired by, like household objects. So we drew things like tape dispensers. I think I based my spaceship off of a stapler remover, and it looked really cool. So it was actually a really cool looking spaceship in the end. And then like I combined different things. So, you know, just like I think it was Potato in our Discord who drew the robot character, or who drew the synth inspired by a train. Like that's kind of the idea, is just taking a random household object and seeing what it can inspire. Those are always really fun because you bring new life into things. Right? Like if you look at, you know, the famous Pixar lamp, drawing objects, you can humanize them, right? But you could never do that if you don't actually study them. If you don't study how they're built, the mechanics of them, then it's really hard to do or to even start. So now the challenge is figuring out the tread on these monster truck wheels. To figure out the tread, you need to figure out where the middle is, right? And it's kind of hard to figure out the middle on a subject that is not exactly centered. So, oh my goodness, I realize we are almost out of time. I'm gonna finish the treads on here. I'm gonna hopefully finish this last truck. See how fast I can finish it off. And like how the treads kind of change direction as it moves into space. Right, so the fundamentals is like things like figuring out where the middle line is when you're drawing things in perspective, right? Some of it is math, unfortunately. You thought you could be an artist and not do math. Well, surprise. Don't worry, it's like visual math, so it's not as bad, but so, you know, even just like looking at the two wheels that I drew, one is like the one on the right looks so different than the one on the left in terms of like how big the tire is. It's pretty funny. It's not very consistent, but I'm gonna say it's bigger because it's closer to me. You sent your robot car in the Discord. Awesome, Tartanus. I will take a look. I will take a look soon. Just catching up with the chat. Drawing while talking. I find I get bored when I'm drawing something and I have no idea how, and I get frustrated and find seeing the thing as shapes and not as the boring objects, and that is fun and also helps. Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Just like always thinking about, you know, like I tell this to my students a lot. You have to trick your brain. Your brain is going to sabotage your efforts as an artist. Your brain's going to be like, you know, Faye, you can't draw this. It's too hard. It's like you're never gonna get this. The perspective is so weird. Like, why did you choose this picture anyway? It's like, why did you do this to yourself, right? So your brain's always gonna kind of talk at you and insult you and tell you you can't do it, and whatever you're drawing is too hard. And you know, you really have to just like be like, okay, brain. This is, you have to trick your brain. You got to be like, brain, I am not drawing a monster truck. Okay, I am drawing a flat photo of some cylinders that just happen to be aligned, and they happen to look like tires, but they're just cylinders with some marks on them. And on top of the cylinder is this cube, or this prism with another prism on top, and you know, a bunch of lines. Like it's no problem. I got this. And the more abstract you can tell your brain, or you can like try to look at stuff as if it's abstract forms, then the easier it becomes. The worst thing to do is to see it as it is. Like, for example, what's something that's really hard to draw? Like noses. What's something, if you take something that's like really hard to draw and you look at it literally, then your brain's going to be like, I can't do this. I can't do this. It's too complicated. So like even if you look at the underside of the car, it's really complicated, right? I am not going to draw all that stuff in there. I'm just going to suggest it. I'm just going to, like, you know, my brain's like, what is that even? Like, how are you even going to draw those wires? You don't know how a monster truck works. It's not going to look convincing at all. And I'm going to be like, you know what? Nobody's going to question the mechanics of this. There's no monster truck engineers looking at my drawing, criticizing it. Okay, like, people are going to see it. And they're going to be like, yeah, that's a monster truck. Like, the wheels are bigger than the truck. It's a monster truck. So most people do not spend hours looking at your drawing. They look at it and they either get it or they don't get it. Maybe they're a little bit confused. But we, as artists, we tend to overthink stuff, like, dramatically. And it really doesn't help us at all. So I cannot see the eyes on this truck, so I'm just going to give it some angry eyes. Just for fun. Yo, I don't want to wake up. Okay. Woo! Woo yourself. Yeah, be kind to yourself. It's the only way. True. I am always battling my brain and trying to trick it. Trying to outsmart my brain with abstraction. Okay. I don't like how I shaded that. Let's try vertical. So again, like, all these patterns on the monster truck, like, ultimately it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna try doing some of these. I don't even know what these things are called. The guts, I guess, the guts of the monster truck. Like, there are some parts that are just like dark, right? You just kind of sketch out a shape, and then there's some stuff, railing like things underneath. As long as, like, it kind of looks convincing, then nobody's gonna question it. My brain and I frenemies from day zero. Art for you to eat. Yes, you can enjoy this monster truck. It's almost done. I'll put it on a plate for you. Eat away. Turned out a bit better than I expected, considering that I had to draw really fast. So yeah, I mean, I will post all my cars on the Discord. So if you haven't joined our Discord yet, it's our wonderful free community where you can find lots of awesome resources and amazing people, art nerds from all around the world who are you know, really working hard on becoming great artists, helping each other out. And we have lots of amazing volunteers who volunteer their time to give you critique, sharing their experience. So it's a wonderful place to learn wherever you are in your art journey. Join our Discord. if you didn't know, it's spring break as well. Here in Canada, we're doing 3 weeks of March break camp. It's called March break here in Canada. In the US, I know we call it spring break. But right now we're doing camps. So Iggy and Josh is doing the digital art camp. So if you want to get better at digital skills, join Josh. Josh is teaching digital art 1 in a camp, and you guys get to do really cool projects every single day and try out new digital techniques. I believe Josh uses Krita, but our teachers also use Clip Studio Paint. Jesse uses Photoshop. I use Krita, I use Rebelle, I use Medibang. I kind of use whatever. They're all very similar, you know, choose one, and you kind of learn one and you learn them all. So yeah, our spring break camps are really fun, and spring classes start back up in 2 weeks. So you can check them out. All right. I didn't do any patterns, but I like the idea of fire. That does not look like fire. That looks like that looks like waves. I always think like monster trucks should have flames on them. But of course, I'm not going to spend all this time on the flames. I'm just going to suggest them. Happy says everyone in there is super cool and nice. This is true. Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely doing the stream nobody wants to do. It's funny, all of our teachers, we take requests, right? Like people on, if you're on our Discord, you know that we have a content suggestions channel where we listen to our fans, and if there's a tutorial that we haven't made yet, let us know, and we definitely consider it. But it's funny because somebody said cars, and the teachers, the creators, we all had a meeting about it. We plan our streams separate, most of the time separately, but also together with Kevin. And none of the teachers wanted to do cars. Nobody wanted to draw cars. I was like, come on, fine, I will do the car stream. I will take it for the team. And here we go, here we are. I'm gonna do some messy guts under here. And there we go. There's our monster truck. All right, so shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching your skills improve in our weekly classes and critiques. So if you didn't know, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible for everyone. So join us and start learning for free with our live stream lessons every week, because we are not just a YouTube channel, we're an online school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their passion into income. So if you're an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord, where you can find our notes and artwork from streams, as well as participate in awesome monthly art challenges and find other resources like live workshops, critiques, and other cool stuff to help you improve as an artist. If you're drawing along with me, or if you did any card drawings, join our Discord, share it. I would love to see it. And thank you again so much for joining me today. I had a lot of fun. I don't normally draw cards, but this was fun. So Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Take care.